Today is Monday, October 29th, 2018. The time is 6:05, and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Mead Board of Trustees. Roll call, please, Mrs. Stratt.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Babcock. Trustee Broadhead.
Here.
Trustee Harris.
Here.
Trustee Hatch.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Palzewski.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem, today is Monday, October 29th, 2019, and you do have a quorum.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. First item is the consent agenda, and I would like to remove ordinance number 882, an ordinance of the Town of Mead, Colorado, improving the Sorrento subdivision final plat. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minusing number D?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, removing item D.
May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The reason I removed ordinance number 882 for approval of Sorrento subdivision final plat is I wanted to have Mr. Carlson come to the podium just to ensure issues with the finishing of Liberty Ranch's sidewalk trail along County Road 7 south of 66 is something that you would eventually finish when you build out all the commercial property.
Is that sorry, what was the question was Liberty Ranch?
Yeah, I'm wondering because we're now approving another plat.
A separate one, correct?
A separate one from Liberty Ranch, but in our original agreement with your organization, you were going to help us with the trail south of 66 on County Road 7 headed towards the school. And I was wondering if
then constructed not only the 30 in the first filing, if I'm roughly about 200. I never constructed nor developed in Liberty Ranch. I just sold the lots there. It's also my understanding from my legal counsel, as well as I believe Mr. McCaskin's been brought in, and the town manager, there was legal action as it pertained not only to myself, but I was initially then released as the HOA board president for Liberty Ranch, the town of Mead, as well as, and forgive me, I don't, Mr. McCaskey, was it Land House or was it St. Aubin Homes? I forget. I don't know which one was brought into that litigation.
With the ditch company?
With the ditch company.
I think it was Land was brought in.
I don't remember which entity it was from the builder that I sold to or brought into litigation with the Sanborn Reservoir and Ditch Company. That was then settled in, I believe, 2013, but I was not a party to that settlement agreement. But what that did is it precluded the installation of that trail, as I understand it. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but there was litigation surrounding that actual trail between the town, the builder, and the HOA, and at the time I was the HOA.
and you were the HOA president.
Right,
Yeah.
and so then I was removed from it because I was not the developer, so that I was dismissed, and maybe is the proper legal term, so I don't have legal counsel here with me tonight, but I was dismissed from that legal action as it only pertained to the town and the builder. And what I have understood is that there was a settlement arrived after some point. I don't know if Mr. McCaskin can chime in. I think he's seen some of the correspondence, but that's the way I understand, is that sidewalk could not be installed as planned or as thought, because it was actually, I don't know if anyone here remembers, but it was actually graded in and ready for construction, which then headed into litigation, which the town was then brought into also.
And I think the Mayor Pro Tem's
basically the agreement was that those improvements would be deferred until such time as the commercial lots
Agreed.
developed, and I think that she's just asking for confirmation.
So if we're talking about Third Street, yes, we went and found meeting minutes from, I believe, February 25th, 2013, which allowed for the deferment of the third at the time that the commercial frontage developed. And so I know my attorney and Mr. McCaskey have been working on an amendment to that MOAPI to memorialize that. As it relates to the trail, that was not part of it
Okay.
for me because it was settled in litigation. And I think
Okay.
it's also helpful for the town to understand, or maybe even help you remember, that in 2011, I actually donated to the town $2 million worth of real estate right there, 30 acres, along with, and I don't know if it's still here, but along with about $307,000 in cash set
Correct.
aside for this park improvement area.
Yes, and we did
Okay.
do a community park in Liberty Ranch with that money, and we thank you very much for
The park was already in though. Yeah, it was,
it. Was,
Basketball court and tennis court.
yeah.
basketball and tennis courts for $307,000?
uh,
That's fine, so be, I mean, that was your money at your discretion. Interesting, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so is there an agreement that we will have a completion of the agreed upon?
My understanding is that that agreement is memorialized in the minutes, the deferment of those Third Street improvements until such time as the commercial develops. We are in the process of working with Mr. Carlson's legal counsel to further memorialize that obligation in a separate written document.
Okay,
So yes, we are in the process of working through that, and I anticipate, Mr. Jumps informed me that he should
We're
have.
trying today to have it, but.
Right, I mean, I think we should have it in the next couple of days,
okay,
and we will work through that amendment when we have it.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so there's no disagreement on the
It's just
amendment, it's just
paper.
memorializing it outside of the meeting minutes and actually into a document.
Okay, and
So-
I appreciate that, and you have done a lot for the town accommodating our requests, so I appreciate.
Well, and I
that, sir.
appreciate staff bringing it, honestly, because I wasn't a party to it. I mean, they're doing their homework, they're doing the right thing by checking into it, so it's nothing wrong. You have a better staff now, and they're taking care of you, so
Yes, they are.
you should be grateful for
And
that.
I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Okay, may I have a motion to approve ordinance number 882, ordinance of the Town of Mead, Colorado, approving the Sorrento subdivision final plat?
I move that we approve ordinance number 882, an ordinance of the Town of Mead, Colorado, approving the Sorrento subdivision final plat.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Carlson. Next item on the agenda is the bills list. May I have a motion to approve the bills list?
I'll make a motion to approve the bills list.
May I have a second? May I have a second on the
I'll
bills
second.
list? A motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please, Mrs. Strott?
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Abstain, Will County?
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Trustee Hack.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Halazewski.
Yes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. This is portion of the meeting where the public may comment upon or ask questions about topics not on the agenda. The public will be recognized and allowed to speak about issues listed on the agenda during the time that they are discussed by the board, subject, however, to reasonable time limitations and decorum. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the benefit of the audience and for public record when you begin to speak. Is there anyone here for audience participation? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the public record, please, sir.
Thank you, members of the board. My name's Gary Mast. I live at 426 5th Street. And I'd just like to say tonight that Saturday, October 20th, town cleanup days. Friday the 19th was one, Saturday the 20th another. It's a town-sponsored event, and it's held on town property. There's a candidate that was running for mayor who used that event to canvass voters, distributing information by flyers in an effort to support their own political agenda. I just have 3 questions that I want clarification for. First, is it legal or illegal to use town property at a town-sponsored function as a platform to benefit themselves, taking advantage of the volume of residents that attend the cleanup days and they just want to get rid of their trash? I don't think it's ever a good idea to mix politics and trash, to be honest with you. Second question, who gave the candidate permission to take advantage of the town event for the sole purpose of promoting herself and her campaign? I would just like to know. Third final question, who determined that this was legal or illegal? I just want to know. I'm not endorsing any candidate. I have no intention of doing that. I just think it's questionable to be able to use town property in that manner, just as we don't use the park for those kinds of things. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Mr. McCasson, can you address his statements?
Well, I think that his main question is it legal or illegal to use town property to distribute campaign materials? The short answer to that is no. What the FCPA does prohibit is the use of town resources, town money, to support a specific candidate or a specific issue. Now, when this was brought to my attention, my advice back to the town manager was it's not strictly prohibited, but there should be a written policy in place of the town that does make it, that talks about how candidates or representatives representing an issue committee can have access to town facilities. All of those candidates or folks on different sides of an issue should have an equal opportunity to use those town facilities, and it should be pursuant to a written policy. So one of the things that I'll be bringing back to this board following the election is to put such a written policy in place. So for example, a candidate could rent a portion of town hall if they wanted to hold a campaign event, or an issue committee could rent space in town hall and have a fundraising event at town hall, but it should be pursuant to a written policy. And there should be, it should make it very clear that no town resources are being used. There should be a facility rental fee. So that's something that has been brought to my attention, and we'll be working through establishing a clear written policy following the election.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak at this time? Seeing no one else coming to the podium, we will move on to the next item, a review and approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that anyone would like on the agenda at this point? Seeing no changes,
Mayor, yes, could we add the police chief to reports for the first report, for staff reports?
yes,
He would like to give an oral report.
first. He'll be the first? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the revised agenda for this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised agenda.
May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for Mead Place preliminary plat. Our town planning director, Mr. Kennedy, will present.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem. You have before you the Mead Place preliminary plat This is a request for the board to consider a preliminary plat for 311 single-family lots on the 94-acre property located generally northwest of the County Road 7 and Highway 66 intersection. The property was created by a minor subdivision in 2016, which also created commercial and multifamily parcels, which is important to note that these are not part of the process tonight, not part of your consideration, just the single-family piece to the north. There's also a PUD overlay on the property approved in 2016 as well. Just a reminder to the board, a PUD is an overlay district that modifies zoning in exchange for additional open space and other amenities and features of the property. In this particular case, the approved PUD reduces the RSF4 minimum lot size from 6,250 square feet to 6,000 square feet. It also limits the number of lots around, or lots under the 6,500 square foot range to 8% of the total number of lots. The PUD also requires larger lots, 8 to 10,000 square feet along the north and east sides in order to buffer surrounding property owners. In terms of legal review criteria, the code requires that the preliminary plat be a functional system of land use, and staff has found it to be as such. The proposal complies with the approved planned unit development overlay in terms of lot size and density. The proposed density is 2.9 lots per acre, which complies with the RSF4 zoning and comprehensive plan, which both allow for up to 4 units to the acre. It also provides adequate internal utilities and roads and other infrastructure which comply with all the relevant regulations that are in place, both in the town and with external utilities. It adds diversity to the housing supply by providing lots under the 7,000 square foot mark, which are rare here in town, as we know. It incorporates parks, trails, and open space by dedicating upwards of 25% of the site to such uses, while including facilities for pickleball, bocce ball, and even a community garden. It also maintains the small town character of the community by incorporating centrally located parks and smaller lots that tend to use less land per home and indirectly preserve surrounding agricultural properties. And it protects the environment by including small lots that require less water and infrastructure. Finally, the development mitigates its impacts in terms of impacts occurring outside of the development. The development's proposing a roundabout at the entrance of County Road 7, the entrance to the subdivision at County Road 7 in order to help calm traffic. There will be turn lanes installed at the 2 access points off of Highway 66 and then also at County Road 7 and the Highway 66 intersection, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Open space and trees will be installed on all sides of the community in order to screen from surrounding property owners. And then finally, the developer will be responsible for paying fees to the town and to the school district to mitigate additional impacts to the broader community. So in conclusion, this request has also been heard and considered by the Planning Commission. They have unanimously voted to recommend approval to your board. Taking that into consideration and noting that it's in compliance with all the other relevant regulations in place, staff recommends that the Board of Trustees approve this request. And with that, I turn it over to the applicant team, who also has a short presentation that they would like to run through as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem and other trustee members. My name is George Hanlon. I am the manager for Equinox Mead LLC, which is the owner and applicant of the property. With me also Rod Schmidt, who is one of my partners. If there's any difficult questions, Rod has already volunteered to answer those. And I do want to thank both the town staff and their consultants for working with us. I think that we have put together, a comprehensive plan, and I think once it is developed, it'll be something that the town will be proud of. In terms of my experience, I've been in development since 1981, initially in Florida. I came here in 95 and have been developing since then. The largest community that I've been involved with is Todd Creek, which is in North Adams County and Weld County. We've been there since 98, and we also operate the water district for that community as well. We got involved with this project in 2000. I'm sorry if I'm causing that noise. But we got involved with the project in 2007, and then unfortunately went through the downturn, and so we're thankful that now finally we've survived it and we're able to be before you tonight. I think that we've put together a very strong consulting team. Leanne Velour from Norris Design, she'll actually make a short presentation on the project and just explain generally what we are trying to accomplish. And then we'll be here to answer any questions. And again, I just thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Leanne Valier with Norris Design. We're at 1101 Bannock Street in Denver. Thank you, Chris, trustees, and staff for your time tonight. We're really excited to be in front of you and to see Mead Place come out of the ground. Like Chris mentioned, we're located the northwest corner of Highway 66 and County Road 7, approximately 168 acres. Here we go. Mead Place is divided into 3 different land areas: single family, multifamily, and commercial, which is consistent with the approved PUD. The single family area is approximately 96 acres, with multifamily parcel a little over 12.5 acres, and the future commercial just shy of 29 acres. This preliminary plat focuses on the proposed roadways and all the improvements associated with the 311 single-family lots. The lot sizes range from 6,000 square feet to over 10,000 square feet, with the majority of the lots under 8,800 square feet. Homes are expected to range in the 2,000 to 3,000 square feet size, and will probably be in the $400,000 range and up. The applicant has also received approval to relocate the Upper Highland ditch closer to County Road 7 so that this site plan can be accommodated. Mead Place neighborhood features a 7.5 acre neighborhood park that is a central feature. Both the multifamily parcel and all of the single family lots are located within walking distance of this park. The amenities of this park will be added value to not only the residents, but the Mead residents as well. And these amenities include a multi-use field, a large covered pavilion, and smaller secondary shelter, play areas with multiple play structures, the bocce ball court and pickleball court, as well as community garden. The design of this park includes formal and naturalized features and will utilize the required drainage as kind of a creek feature with little footbridges and a fun experience. The town code requires that single-family residential PUDs provide 20% of gross area as open space. Including the park, Mead Place is providing 25% open space, which is about 26 acres. It's 6.88 acres over what's required. Within the open space, there are just shy of 2 miles worth of off-sidewalk trails, including around the detention pond, a loop, and trails that will connect to the town of Mead circulation system. Phasing for the single-family development is anticipated to be constructed in 2 phases. The first phase will consist of 144 lots, which are concentrated in the southwest corner of the plan. Roadway improvements will include the roadway construction of Stagecoach Drive, connecting to Highway 66. The north half of Mead Place Parkway between Stagecoach and County Road 7. This will help direct the majority of the traffic up and out of Stagecoach Drive and minimize the impact onto County Road 7 and the surrounding residents. The second phase will consist of the remaining 167 lots, and the roadway improvements included with the second phase are the remaining north half of Mead Place Parkway between Stagecoach and Highway 66, the roundabout at Mead Place and County Road 7, and the roadway improvements at County Road 7 and the intersection improvements at Highway 66 and County Road 7. These improvements will also help provide additional alternative routes and alleviate the impacts of to the surrounding roadways. The south side of Mead Place Parkway will be constructed with the multifamily and commercial parcels as they develop with market demands. We thank you for your time and consideration tonight, and our team is here for questions.
I have a question. You guys are doing, it sounds like you're planning a lot of road improvements at various locations, but Highway 66 being a state highway, how is that being coordinated with them and what they have planned for that? And I'm asking because in Firestone, they did Firestone Boulevard, and then they redid Firestone Boulevard, and then they redid Firestone Boulevard. They seriously have done that road 3 flipping times, and it's insane. And it'd be nice to get it right the first time and make sure that we're not redoing it 5 times down the road. So is there a coordination there? Can you just tell me what that is? Or, I don't know, somebody?
If I may.
Sure.
So as you pointed out, State Highway 66 is a state highway.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't do anything on that road without our friends at CDOT's support, and they have to allow anybody to do it, the town or a developer. We've been working with CDOT, probably for the last 3 years. As many of you will recall, we received a grant of about $1.5 million from the state to help improve that intersection. That intersection has a lot of problems. It needs a new signal. It needs new turn lanes. So we've been working with the developers and the state to create a solution at that intersection that both serves the development and all the rest of the traffic on 66. But I think you can rest assured that it won't be done multiple times because we haven't seen much done out there. We don't have the Firestone problem of doing and redoing. We need to start with the doing. And they have been really helpful. Probably 2 years ago, George and I met back when I was the town engineer, and we were talking about, who would fund what at what point of it. But it is going to be a big project. The town also is looking at putting in for funding for a underpass that will go underneath that intersection and ultimately connect up to the high school. So all of these things are being done with staff, the developers, and our friends at the state. None of it's being done in a vacuum.
So the state is contributing though to this though, right? Because this is
federal
the highway. Are they helping?
Yes.
Okay.
Federal funds generally flow through the state. They've already designated 1.5 million, and then we're looking at a separate grant that would also be a federal grant funded through the state for the underpass, but there's a significant local contribution coming from the developers as well.
And one other question to add to that, because I've gotten some questions from constituents. What time frame does that go into effect with the building of the development? Is it something that will be done in conjunction, prior to, during, or after?
I'm going to let the developer and his engineer speak to the timing in terms of at what point in their development does it trigger those improvements.
At the Planning Commission hearing, this was a big topic as well. In fact, of the comments made, it was primarily focused on traffic. And what we have tried to do is minimize the impact in the early stages of the development. So our first phase of development is the western portion of the property, and Stagecoach is that entry road that cuts the center of the multifamily and the commercial. That is going to be the emphasis, rather than people making a turn onto Weld County Road 7 and then trying to cut through traffic to come in, with a left-hand turn off of 7 onto Mead Place Parkway. Our emphasis is going to be to bring them in on Stagecoach, which is an easy right-in turn. And then for people that want to go east, then they can come out to 7, take a right-hand turn, and then make the left-hand turn. The development, what we currently plan, and kind of to tie in with what Helen said, when our first meetings, you know, CDOT has already said that their responsibility is Highway 66. Our commitment has been that we're going to improve the intersections, all 3 intersections where we come onto the highway, with specific intentions at Weld County Road 7, but in addition to that, the turn lanes along the 66. So our intent would be then that the second portion of the development, the second phase of development, is when the traffic circle is when the interchange will be constructed. And I would suspect that what we'll try to do is work with the town through a developer agreement or a subdivision improvement agreement to where we phase the number of permits that are issued by the town to where we have to have those improvements done, completed, and initially accepted. And that was our commitment to CDOT as well as the town, is that we would focus our attention on the intersections, the primary one being 7. So there's going to be some improvements that have to be made. For instance, there has to be an abutment added to the tunnel for the Highland Ditch. And that's got to be brought out, you know, I forget, 30 feet or something, so that it can begin to accommodate a right-hand turn, because right now there is no right-hand turn lane. Right. And so, you know, the toughest thing that we have is obviously funding the improvements that we have to get the development going. Once we get the development going, the town starts receiving AV, we have the ability then to finance more of the infrastructure. So that's the approach that we're taking.
Okay, thank you.
Are there
Thank
any
you, sir.
lights being added, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, there will be
Where are you adding lights?
at 7, and I think that's the only place that lights are called
Oh,
for.
so Stagecoach and the Parkway are not gonna have lights at
Right.
66? Are you gonna
Right.
make it so that people can't turn certain ways into those 2 places
Well,
to
for-
slow traffic down, et cetera, or?
We will have the same restrictions that as far as being able to come out and make a left-hand turn onto 66. The
Okay.
same thing that Legacy Ranch has across the street, that they can't come out and
Okay,
make a
that's what
left-hand
I'm
turn.
meaning. Yeah, make it so that people
Right.
can't.
So there won't be any
alleviate
conflicting
as many
turns.
accidents as you can before they even happen. Perfect.
Correct. And I think right now, until there's commercial development at that corner, we probably will see the speed limits will restrict the ability to add any additional traffic lights from 7 going west. Okay.
Any
Any-
other questions? Thank you, sir, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it for public hearing. The time is 6:39. The public will be allowed to ask questions, make comments on the subject. You will be allowed 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Members of the public that have signed in will be called up to speak by Mrs. Strutt. If you didn't sign in, we will have you come up at the end and announce your name, address, etc.
So I just checked the list. Sherry Olson is the only one who checked, who signed in. Ms. Olson, would you like to speak?
Good evening, Sherry Olson, 303 Adams Avenue in Mead. Actually, I was at the Planning Commission, and so I had a lot of my questions answered. The biggest issue that directly impacts me is with the approval of the new subdivision that we talked about as far as the final plat tonight. And with this subdivision, I am extremely concerned about traffic and how that is going to flow. When you think about specifically the sandwich, our sandwich houses, I like to call it, they're on Adams Avenue. There's maybe 30 of us that are highly impacted by both. with the traffic flow. And so as we move forward, I'm going to be interested in hearing from CDOT where we're going, but I would strongly ask that the town trustees consider traffic flow and how that impacts those of us who are already here. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? If so, please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Jim Halick, 2650 Meadow Lane, Mead, Colorado. My question is that I got in here a little bit late and I heard about traffic circles. Where is the intended traffic circle on this print?
It would be on the right-hand side about midway in the,
On that main drag in that, what you're calling, what street is that now?
It's on 7.
Road 7,
So you're gonna put a traffic circle on County Road 7?
right there.
And what's the circumference of said traffic circle?
That, my engineer would have to tell you.
Is he here?
I think the intent is to be sure that trucks of any size can get around that traffic circle.
Well, in Longmont and Sundance, they put in 4 or 5 traffic circles that the circumference is so small that even a fire truck in Longmont has to go over the top of the traffic circle in order to make the turn into the subdivision. And I don't see enough room built on 7 to build a big enough traffic circle on 7 to not slow traffic down and stop it to get a big truck through there. Unless you got a bigger, circumference than what I'm seeing here.
Is that your only question, sir?
That is one of my only questions.
It is your only question?
Yeah.
Okay, then why, the engineer will come up and answer it for you and for the crowd. Thank you, sir. Do you want to come up and state your name and address? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris McGranahan. I'm a traffic engineer with LSC Transportation Consultants. We're at 1889 York Street in Denver. So make sure I remember this from Planning Commission. Yep, there it is. So this is the roundabout. There is a significant amount of right-of-way that's needed on both sides of the road to accommodate the roundabout because, as our speaker mentioned, there's not enough right-of-way there to build any kind of a circle, let alone one that is big enough for what we need. I don't have the specific dimensions in front of me because it's been conceptual, but I think it's in the 160 to 180 foot diameter range. And the way we design the roundabouts is there's 2 general design parameters that you have to look for in roundabouts. One is to accommodate large trucks, and the other one is to make it so the cars can't go too fast. Those 2 objectives conflict with each other. The bigger you make the roundabout, the easier it is for the trucks and the faster the cars can go and vice versa. So it's a little bit of a threading the needle. We worked with our civil engineer, Manhard, to come up with a footprint that we feel will accommodate trucks, allow cars to enter the roundabout at 25 miles per hour, but not faster, unless I guess you're in something that's really sporty. So the idea is that the cars will enter at 20 to 25 miles per hour when there are no cars present. A truck will have to slow down to make the turn, but it will be accommodated. That will have to be approved, just like the roadway plans would be approved whenever that time comes. But we've already done a fairly thorough design because we're trying to set the right-of-way around it now, even though we're not building it yet. And so we feel that this roundabout's big enough for trucks and small enough that the cars can't go too fast. And we'd like to think that it's going to avoid, if anyone has a perception of speeding on County Road 7, they won't be people speeding through the roundabout. So we like the traffic calming as people approach the highway. So if I have any other questions about the roundabout, I'm more than happy to talk about it, but we feel it's going to be big enough for the vehicles that will use it.
Our fire department is attached to this building and they do travel that road. Will they be able to go in the roundabout as opposed to him stating that in Longmont they go over?
Well, I'm not sure what he's talking about going over. Roundabouts are designed with what we call a truck apron. It's the inside of the circle has a mountable portion and a unmountable portion. The unmountable portion might be where you have some landscaping or some signage or something. The truck apron is designed so that the cab of the tractor trailer stays in the circulating roadway like the car would, but it allows the trailer to get up on top of the the platform. And when we design that for final design, we'll look and see at the percentage of trucks. If there's a lot of trucks, that apron's usually a little lower. If it's not very many trucks at all, we usually make it a little taller. But if he's talking about the trailers getting up on that mountable piece, that's the intent.
Oh, okay.
So.
I see. Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions from the trustees? Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there any other questions from the audience?
Hi, Ellen Hamer, 313 Adams Ave. I have a clarification. You all were saying that the work on 7 would not begin or be done until the commercial area was built? Is that true?
No, the question was traffic signals.
Okay.
And there may possibly at some point in time be a warrant needed for a traffic signal. We would not be the
A
ones to
signal
dictate that.
where, though? I mean,
Other
there's
than-
already signals at 7.
The signal is at 7. If the commercial were developed,
Okay.
there may be a need for a signal at Stagecoach. I don't know that.
So you would go light, light, and possibly light at 5?
No, I don't think you.
Boom, boom, boom?
No.
Because it's more necessary at 5 than it would be at Stagecoach, I would believe. Because people are only turning north off of 66.
Miss, could you ask all your questions and then we will have him
Right,
answer
okay,
them all?
okay. So the question is, when will the road work between the end of your north of your development to the light be completed? Will it depend upon the end of the development being completed, or will it be completed during the development? Whatever. So, in other words, do we have to wait for a certain amount of houses to be sold before the roads
So-
are taken care of?
Taken care of, okay.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, miss. Would you please address that for us? Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
Chris McGranahan again from LSC Transportation Consultants. Phase 1 is the lots roughly lit up here. So the western half, I think you probably figured that out from the earlier presentation. So the idea is that we would build this road to serve those homes, and this half of this road, which is ultimately 4 lanes, so 2 of the 4 lanes out to 7. Now the intent here is that anyone coming from to or from the west would come, and we would have a left turn lane on the highway to turn left in. There'd be no need to use 7. When they come out in the morning, they would come out here and turn right. Again, no need to use 7. People that are coming from the interstate or from the east we would build a right turn deceleration lane, so they would, again, not really have a need to use 7 because their homes are over here. So the people that want to go east on the highway would come over here, make a right, which would be fairly easy to do, and then impact the traffic signal. So we've limited our impacts to one movement in one direction, knowing from working with staff and CDOT that this intersection's taking a little time to figure out and get all the right of way and all the funding and everything's established. So our intent is to build phase 1 where we have the minimum impact of that intersection. Our phase 2, which is all the homes that are up against 7 here, are when we would build this roundabout and make the improvements to this intersection and then have this improved dramatically. The plan here is, as you come southbound, to initially have a left turn lane, a through lane to go to the high school, and a right turn lane. And then ultimately, when the highway is widened to 6 lanes someday, potentially have a double left to turn on the highway. So, I think depending on how CDOT's quote ballot measure goes, that may be sooner rather than later, but that's up to the voters, so hard to say how that's gonna go.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, thank you, sir. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Brian Spungel, 2688 County Road 32. So one quick comment. At the Planning Commission meeting, we kept the public comments open while there was response back. I'd like to encourage we do that here also. It was very nice change of procedure. So a couple things. The timing, I have the same concern about the timing with Sorrento on County Road 5 and this on County Road 7, that I see those 2 projects dropping at the same time, dropping a ton of houses at the same time. We're apparently not getting a light at 5. I hope maybe we'll hear more about that tonight. But if we don't get that light at 5, all that traffic's headed our way across 32 and then down 7 to clog this up. Yeah, and I see that as not great planning. I want to bring up a couple things that were at the Planning Commission that I haven't heard mentioned tonight. Their park in the center, there's no parking planned for it currently, so I want to make sure that that's addressed in the final plat. I've got concerns about light pollution in the neighborhood area. I recognize eventually someday the commercial will be in there, but for the neighborhood lighting, I'd like to hear about planning about that, keeping that down, especially in the rural areas. I see the trees planned in here. I don't see a lot of trees on the north side. I'm curious if there's a plan to put trees along the north side bordering it or not. Looks like not, but I just got a question about that. I really appreciate this development though. I see this developer as a developer who's really trying to genuinely blend in with the area. He's trying to do the feathering. You know, they've put the feathering that used to be in the comprehensive plan, I don't know if it's in the current one. You know, they put their larger lots along County Road 7 to kind of blend in with the larger lots that are north of it. I really appreciate what he's trying to do here, and I agree this is something the town can be proud of. And it really makes me question some of the changes we've been making recently, like why do we have to change our minimum lot size down from 7,000? Why do we have to accept Sorrento Estates having 4,700 square foot lots? You know, when I see this and I see like Red Barn, and then I question why are we accepting these other ones, and why are we calling that a PUD when all they've really done is put a big park in there? So that's my comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Who would like, okay, thank you, Miss.
Leanne Valier with Norris Design. First question being the park and parking. All of the internal streets have been designed for on-street parking. We will explore if there's any room to maybe add a small parking lot next to the park. We will explore that during the final plat process, see if that's possible. Lighting, all of the lighting within the single family area itself will be there for public safety, and will, luckily lighting has come a long way from technology standpoint with LED lights, and the light pollution is a lot less. They will all be dark sky cutoff fixtures in compliance with today's standards. So I think that will be minimized. And then the third question about trees on the perimeter, we actually have, which isn't depicted at this scale, but we have a large drainage swale running along the entire north border that's, I don't know, 20, 30 feet wide, which restricts us from planting trees there. I, as a landscape architect, would love to put lots of trees there, but the swale prohibits those improvements. So that's.
Okay. Thank you, Miss. Is there any other questions from the audience?
Come at it a quick way.
Okay.
Jim Lewanski, 111 Mallard Court, Mead, Colorado. So I just wanted to get a clarification on what kind of study, or I mean, the impact on County Road 7 with people coming out of this development, taking a left to go up north I-25. I mean, I'm assuming you considered that, because to be perfectly honest, if I'm living here, that's going to be quicker than me having to hit 3 lights to get on I-25. So I'm just curious whether or not that has been considered as part of the traffic impact study.
So the traffic study included all the intersections you see on this map. We assumed some traffic would go north on County Road, but it's worth noting that our traffic study looks at build out of our property, you know, 5, 6, 7 years from now, and then a 2040 scenario, which assumes that most of these issues we've been talking about have been taken care of. So the idea is that in the future, someone wants to go to the interstate, they could just as easily go south to 6 and not hit the gridlock that they would hit today. So the traffic study looked at all these intersections. It's also worth mentioning that when we met with CDOT, we originally had a right-in, right-out for the commercial property, and both your town traffic engineer and CDOT, with the current speed limits, we're not going to go for that. So that's where George was suggesting that If we end up getting a reduction in speed on the corridor, it's possible we could put in a right in, right out because the turn lanes are based on how fast the road is. So currently the road's so fast that the lanes have to be quite long. So that means we don't get the right in, right out here. In the future, if CDOT were to lower this speed limit to 45, which we have no control over, that we might, if this commercial property were to develop in 4 or 5 years and that's happened, they might do a right in, right out. But the idea here is we switch the right in, right out over to 9 because it's, what we would have is a right in, right out with the roundabout next to it, which makes U-turns much easier to do. So the traffic study looked at all of these areas. We met with CDOT a couple times. We met with your town's traffic engineer on the conference calls a few times, and I think we've satisfied both of those groups that our plan will work. It's just a matter of timing everything, which is always the challenge. It's much easier to say what we need 20 years from now than to figure out how to get there. So, but I think we've had a lot of willing partners, and we hope that continues to work that way.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the audience that wishes to speak?
Hi, Steve Fox, 3602 Deacon Drive in Mead. There's been a lot of talk around the roundabout, and that's where my concerns rise. Trustee Harris made the comment that certain parts of the area have been done and redone, and I would say the one thing that is common with that in our community is the intersection or the damage to the intersection at 66 and 7. And while I don't have fact-based evidence, I believe that a percentage of the individuals who have been involved in those incidents are teenage drivers that are commuting to and from the high school. When I look at the construction required to install a roundabout, originally from Florida, I've seen those be installed, I've seen those fail. My concern is around the teenage drivers that will be commuting down that road. And for those of us that have teenage drivers at home, we know when something like this happens, they don't plan ahead to factor in additional time. They know that it takes me 8 minutes to get to the school. My question around that is, what is our plan for redirecting traffic in that area through the downtime that I assume County Road 7 is going to be closed? Do we have a proposed contingency plan to redirect our high school traffic in another route to get them from all of the communities north of 66 down to the high school and back? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chris McGranahan again, LSC Transportation Consultants. That is a concern, and it's been done wrong before, that's for sure. So we've done several roundabout designs in the Front Range lately that have been constructed, some of them with a lot more traffic than this. So we have some experience with how to do that. When the roundabout's big enough, which this one's quite large, typically what you do is you build the outer part of the circle on the sides where the road isn't today, and then you have some temporary pavement to tie that into the existing roadway, and then you move all the traffic to the outside and then build a middle. And so there's going to be some temporary pavement and whatnot, but we would assume that we wouldn't be allowed to close County Road 7, and so that does add a little bit to the cost, but it keeps things moving. So we keep the traffic in the middle and build the outside of the roundabout, then we build whatever temporary pavement we need to connect, and then move the traffic from inside to outside, and then build the middle. It'll be a construction zone, get people used to going slower, so when the roundabout opens, they're used to going slow. So that should help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As well as our town would make our citizens aware of it as well. Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions from the audience? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:59. Do any of the trustees have any more comments to make? Okay, can I have a motion regarding ordinance 883?
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance number 883, an ordinance of the town of Mead, Colorado, approving the Mead Place preliminary plat amendment number 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the informational item for CDOT traffic signal warrant process. Town engineer and Public Works Director Erica Rasmussen will introduce the presenter for this.
Good evening, members of the board. As you know, the board had previously requested some additional information as to the CDOT process for justifying a traffic signal. And at that time, we were specifically discussing the County Road 5 and Highway 66 intersection, which is timely based on our conversations tonight. So we did invite CDOT to come and speak to you tonight about that process in a general sense, so everyone understands the criteria that needs to be met in order to initiate a new signal. And so I'd like to introduce to you Jonathan Woodworth. He is a traffic operations engineer with the CDOT Region 4 office.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan, out of the Greeley headquarters office for CDOT. Pretty much I want to shed some light on kind of how CDOT goes about approving and implementing a new signal. So initially what we need to do is we have a traffic engineering study that is done on the intersection in question. And here we look at pretty much kind of what the existing geometry is, what the traffic volumes may be, any pedestrians, bicycle traffic, and all the other kind of factors that are kind of inherent to that intersection. And with that, what they do is we go through an analysis to go through 9 warrants that are governed by the MUTCD manual. So this is pretty much what everything that CDOT does, we have to abide by kind of the rules that are set forth. And these warrants, we have 9 of them, and a couple of them are based on volume aspects of the intersection, such as the first 2 warrants. We have one that looks pretty much at cross traffic in terms of 8-hour volumes as well as 4-hour volumes. And we look at various criteria on which traffic will satisfy those circumstances. Then we also look at if we have, say, a big complex or businesses or in the area, we look at kind of peak hour that are kind of inherent to the nature at that location. So think of like, you know, if you had like a big event and everybody's kind of leaving at the same time, we would look at kind of the impact there, and that would also issue a warrant. Then we also look at pedestrian volumes, where we would count how many pedestrians are using that intersection. At a certain threshold, we would then need to implement a signal or warrant a signal. If there's schools nearby, kind of the same philosophy. If there's a lot of school children, and the MUTCD defines this as elementary through high school, we would also be warranted a signal if a certain threshold was to be in place. Other ones are kind of inherent to existing kind of infrastructure. So if you're on a coordinated corridor in which you have signals talking to each other, you kind of want to maintain kind of groupings of cars, so you can kind of get continuous greens. So we kind of look at that, and if this would also work for this kind of at this intersection. We also look at crashes. If an intersection is having a lot of crashes that could be correctable by having a traffic signal, we would also look at that. And for this, we would look at accident history, and over a 12-month period, and we have to reach a certain threshold, that would be deemed correctable. We would also look at roadway network, and this is kind of for looking at kind of how the infrastructure is and kind of how exactly traffic is being used around these on this roadway, and if a signal would benefit the traffic in that regard. And the last warrant would be looking at if you had railway and kind of if you're on a grade. So pretty much this would allow for various implementation of a signal in the event that would increase safety due to having to be on a grade or if there's a lot of train crossings. So one thing to keep in mind is that, you know, even if you have a traffic warrant that gets met, that doesn't necessarily mean a signal is going to be put in place. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. A lot of it, we wouldn't say necessarily put in a signal if putting a signal in would actually cause disruption in traffic or makes the intersection more inherently unsafe. A lot of these would be kind of up to working with the developer and kind of see what the traffic impact study at this intersection would be, and then we'd go through and analyze them for these warrants. That's kind of a very brief overview of what we have to abide by when analyzing the signals in their warranting process. So I'd like to welcome that up for any questions from anybody in the audience or whatnot.
Okay, thank you. So there's 9 things you look at.
Correct.
So say, okay, one is pedestrians. So you hit a threshold on, okay, we've hit the number of pedestrians. So let's say you're looking for 9 check marks, or are you looking for 5 out of 9 check marks? Are you looking for, does one check mark have more emphasis than the other check marks in the process, or?
Yeah, so to warrant a signal, you need only meet technically just one of these warrants. So in regards to pedestrian, let me pull up my numbers here. So this is all defined in the MUTCD, which is what we use. So so this one we would essentially this would be looking at a couple factors. You'd be looking at there's a chart in the MUTCD on kind of what the vehicle volume is for the average day, and you would also kind of look at kind of how many pedestrians are crossing at any given kind of time span. And depending on the volume and how many pedestrians, that would kind of warrant. So we would look at the charts based on MUTCD. So part of the traffic study, we'd look at it, we'd plot it, and if it meets that threshold, then that'd meet that warrant type of deal. And also kind of plays into if there's like a similar pedestrian crossing that is, in this case, 300 feet away, then it wouldn't, we would assume that these pedestrians could use that other crossing.
Okay. So if only one check mark needs to be met, since lots of people are concerned about that intersection, how close are we to one of those check marks that we need to get that light? Like, what, I mean, mostly people are concerned about volume coming out of Sorrento Estates onto 5. So I'm assuming that you guys know, okay, here's how many cars we're anticipating at 8 o'clock in the morning as everybody's going to work. Like, okay, you need to say, okay, 500 cars have to cross that intersection for us to warrant a light, but you guys are at 300, we estimate. How close are we to getting that light? What's the criteria that we're missing, or what are we?
So we have, I know there's been a traffic impact study done, but we also need to look at it from a warrant perspective, in which we would go through and we'd go through each one of these warrants step by step, and it would kind of go, okay, do we meet warrant 1, yes or no, and do we meet warrant 2? And you know, there's other, and depending on, like, if you don't meet any of the warrants, because not all of these will be applicable for every intersection, right? So if you're not by a school, you're not going to meet the school warrant or whatnot. But if you meet one, you can also look at alternatives. I mean, maybe you don't need to have a traffic signal. Maybe you could be better implemented by having a 4-way stop. Or there's other things to look at. Maybe you would change the road geometry or things like that. So, but if we have one met, that would allow us to at least open the door to putting a signal in. So the next step would be to probably go through a warrant analysis, where we go through and explicitly see, are these being met?
Has that not been done for County Road 5 and 66?
I haven't seen it. Erica, do you know? Yeah, so I haven't seen that.
How do we get them to do that?
I would say that'd be working with, you guys would go out and contract out a warrant study.
Oh, so we would have to pay for that traffic study to then submit to CDOT, or what do you mean?
I believe that'd be the process in which we would have, we'd have you contract out with a consultant. They would do a warrant study. We would look at the results, and we would work with them and kind of see what the answers would be.
So wouldn't Sorrento?
How come we didn't ask Sorrento Estates developer to do this then?
So it's my understanding that the engineers and the developers at Sorrento, through our traffic engineers as well, did contact the state, and the state indicated it doesn't warrant a signal. That's what we were told going through this. I appreciate your presentation on warrants, and I think it's all technically correct, but what we really want to talk about is that particular intersection. The question is, with 454 homes coming in and the traffic study that was done, it indicated that it still wouldn't need a traffic signal.
Correct,
And
yeah.
were you involved in the analysis, or
I was not
perhaps Mr.
involved, but
Haas?
I did read it. Yeah, it says that a traffic signal was not warranted at this time, but may be in the future, is what came across, but there was an explicit warrant analysis for that intersection. So typically, these are studies that, problem intersections we may, yeah, is that something that we would take on, Larry?
What we would do is we would ask the
Larry,
developer from Sorrento,
can you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you come up? We still need your name and address. Thank you, sir.
I'm Larry Haas, I'm the traffic operations engineer with CDOT also. And Jonathan, you did a great job on your presentation. What we would do is we'd ask Sorrento to provide any kind of warrant analysis. So it's at no cost to you guys whatsoever. So it's Sorrento's traffic that would be generating the need for a traffic signal. So what we will do is we will go back to Sorrento and their developers and say, okay, at what points during your development are you going to be generating traffic? And then can you analyze it at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? And we will determine at that point, at what phase will the traffic need a signal out on State Highway 66. At that point, then it is all the responsibility of Sorrento and the town to place that signal out there.
Even though it's a state highway,
Even though it's a state highway, you have a permit, the developer has a permit to put the development in there and impact State Highway 66. With that information, then when the permit that was written says that the state is not going to participate in any form of roadway improvements or the signalization for County Road 5.
I do have another question to add on to that I was thinking about. So what drives the signal? Is it the number of projected cars, or is it the number of cars that would be going through that at the peak times? How do you
It's
determine?
both. It's projected volume. It's projected trips. How many, Mr. McGranahan from LSC, this is what he does, is he projects how many, okay, there is basically a trip manual that we use also when we're looking at this. And it says for each house, how many trips will this house generate? Anywhere from 2 to 10 trips. It depends on, and so they average it out and they look at, okay, the first filing of Sorrento is going to have maybe, I don't know, 50 homes. Okay, is that going to, out of that 50 homes, how many trips are going to be generated? Where are they going? Where are they, type of thing. It's all an estimation. So that they all come out to County Road 5 and they want to turn east or west on on Highway 66, then we go, okay, is this creating a delay? Is there a delay on County Road 5? Is there a hardship on State Highway 66? Are there crashes? Oh, we don't want that. All of a sudden now warrants are met. Okay, warrants are met. Sorrento, County, it's up to you to get it signalized. You guys, they start the development, developing the process of planning a signal. We are the reviewers and the approvers of it. Once it's in, then CDOT maintains it.
So the information that Sorrento Estates submitted to you guys that you looked at for putting a light there, was that for their final total build out, or was that for phase 1, or do you know?
Erica, can you help me with that?
It was for the full development. The full development did not warrant the signal at 66.
Seriously, I have a hard time believing that.
So.
Obviously, lots of people have a hard time believing that.
But Mr. McGranahan is a professional engineer, and he was willing to put his official seal on that type of a judgment. So that's the best that we can do with that. Will it eventually happen? Possibly, probably, but we have to wait and react to it at that time.
And it could change. I mean, I can only speak to where I work at Smucker's. they just put in a stoplight over on 119 that was not scheduled until the middle of next year, and it got put in like about 2 months ago. Because of the traffic volume coming out of there with construction trucks and everything. So they do make amendments and changes based on traffic and accidents. I mean, it's a bad, it's
Yeah, it's
just
not a static document. So,
yeah,
I mean,
it's
like,
not it's like, it's about as bad as 66 and County Road 5 if you had 400 houses down the road. And so they do
Well,
make amendments and changes. It's
I
not
know, but I
black
also
and white.
know my kids cross, I have teenagers, and they drive across 66 on County Road 7, and the number of accidents there is frightening. It's frightening, and these kids are teenage drivers, and yet CDOT will not make improvements to that yet. And that, to me, is really frustrating.
Let me back up a little bit. As Ms. Mickelbrink stated, that we have put some money into the
Yeah.
improvement of this intersection, okay, along with partnering with the town of Mead, federal government, and with the developer to look at some of these improvements. So
Yeah,
it's already
I know it
it's on-
started finally, but it seems like this has been a really long time coming since that high school was built. That this intersection has been a problem, and I don't wanna see the same things starting to happen at County Road 5 that we've seen at 7.
I would agree.
I mean, it
Yeah,
feels like we've
absolutely.
been retroactive in dealing with 7 when it would have been really nice to have been proactive with County Road 7 and 66.
There was a ditch that was a problem for us running right next to County Road 7 that we didn't want to touch at the time. So we put the signal in, hopefully it was, creating a safer atmosphere for the drivers. Then the high school came. And now it's just a mix of everything. So now we're coming back and we're making improvements to the intersection. And hopefully then there won't be another school on County Road 5. We teeter-totter back and forth. We want to make it safe for everybody. That's our whole idea. We don't
I
like
know,
crashes.
I just like to see County Road 5 be done more proactively than reactively, the way I feel like County Road 7 has been done. So I don't know how we do that necessarily. I know you guys have rules you have to follow and what have you, but I mean, obviously there are a lot of people concerned about the proposed traffic coming out of Sorrento Estates, and I'm worried that we're gonna be in that reactive state again.
So, if I may, one thing I do think you have to understand with traffic signalization, and I know this sounds like gobbledygook coming from engineers, but one thing, when you put in a signal that isn't warranted, it can be less safe than a non-signalized intersection. So we have to trust, we have some great engineers working at CDOT. They are very careful to make sure that they don't put an unwarranted signal, especially on a place like State Highway 66, because just like you're pointing out, we have accidents at County Road 7 and 66. I believe that signal was put in, and the warrants were primarily timed with the high school. And we all want it there, but as you can see, there are a number of accidents there. So one of the problems is, if it's just borderline on making the warrants, we can run into a worse situation than we would have where it is. Believe me, if I looked at the information, and I understand 450 homes, that's about almost 5,000 trips a day at full build out. It sounds like, wow, why isn't this warning a signal? It isn't, and they look at 20-year traffic projections too. It isn't just those 450 homes. They look at the ambient traffic. I think if things change over time, obviously we're gonna be working with our partners at CDOT, but just remember, safety has a lot of components to it, and putting an unwarranted signal in there could be just as unsafe as putting a signal in there. It's just food for thought. But I do trust these guys, and I know that they know what they're doing. It's not like they're being hoodwinked by a developer. Their engineer has to convince these engineers that it's the right thing. So and as the years go by, we're gonna continue these conversations. It's not like we're letting anybody off the hook. But I do appreciate your questions, because these are hard questions. They're hard questions to answer.
Well, I just know I know there are people asking those questions, so.
Well, let's go down the path of, let's just say there wasn't a signal at County Road 7.
That's a scary thought.
There is-
Well, but at the same time, I feel like if, in addition to, one of the main problems with County Road 7 is there's a light there, great, but there's no turn lanes. So
You're
people
exactly right.
sit there at that intersection forever because somebody's waiting to turn left, but all the other traffic's going straight.
Right.
And so you can sit there forever waiting to turn. And so
And
then I
as-
think teenage drivers make maybe not the wisest decisions and try to sneak in that left turn really fast. And then they end up getting nailed. And, you know, I mean, I feel like it should have, the turn lane should have been done in conjunction with the light. At least a minimum of a left turn lane would have been really good.
It would have been really good, yes.
And
And unfortunately, at the
helpful.
time when I signalized it, I did not have enough money to put any intersection improvements. I only had enough money to put the signal in.
Yeah.
Then, and as you see most everywhere, we usually have a big steel pole and a big steel arm that goes out. This one is not that way because I had to span over the ditch. So it is in a temporary signal build, if you would, but it's working right now. And yes, there aren't any improvements on the State Highway 1. Oh, well, what we have is a project coming, so there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I'm not sure, we're gonna be, we're gonna make it an intersection improvements. I'm not sure what the details are, but it's gonna be better than what it is today.
I don't think it could get much worse.
Well, we could take the signal out.
I know, but,
Which we don't wanna do.
No,
'cause then
I
it makes, then it makes everybody,
I know.
take
I'm not
the
trying
risk
to,
that we don't wanna
I'm
do.
not trying to harp on you. It is a hard situation, I know.
Is there any other questions? Thank you,
You're welcome.
both of you.
Before he sits down, could I just give a little shout out to Larry Haas? Because about a year and a half ago, I met with him and asked him to improve the signage on I-25. And if you all remember that we got a sign up that pointed the Mead exit, that's because of this guy right here. He made that happen. So I just wanted to, we were lucky enough to have him come talk to us tonight. I've never had a chance to publicly acknowledge that, and I just wanted to say thank you to him and for you guys to recognize him for doing that. He does what he says he's gonna do.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
sir. And thank both of you
All right.
Welcome.
for showing up tonight. We appreciate that. Okay, next item on the agenda
Oh,
is,
somebody raised their hand out there.
oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Could you give your name and address?
Bill Deaver, Liberty Hall Incorporated, 2029 Highway 66, which is the Grange building. So-
Okay,
So it's an unincorporated Weld County is what is where the location is. But right now, we have an entrance on 66, and everyone, instead of waiting at that light, cuts through our parking lot and shoots through. So part of your mitigation of the traffic is actually, you have less traffic there because people are tearing through my parking lot all the time. So I have 3 4-H groups, I have Future Farmers there, I have Masons there, I have Grange still there. So there's, kids in the parking lot, and people will just tear through at 30 miles an hour. So so I put in a letter to CDOT requesting, what has to happen to get a light there. Because since Extraction put in the 9-well pad behind us, which is great because the Grange has a little bit of, equity in that, the truck traffic coming out of there with all of the tanker trucks is really what's doing. It's not the homes, but on a Saturday, I'm there Saturday morning from 9:30 to noon, and there's at least 30 trucks that come through there and stop, 3 and 4 of them backed up, and they're tearing through my parking lot while I'm sitting there. So on my entrance on 66, I'm going to put up a gate and section that part off that we can open and close, but I'm going to be leaving it closed for most of the time, that people, this way they can't cut through there. It won't stop them from coming in and doing donuts in there and making the U-turn because we've replaced the parking lot 3 times because of that. But that whole area is kind of a nightmare because of the traffic. I have gentlemen, there's folks that are older. A lot of our members are, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and for them to try to pull out of there at night, it's, there's no street lights there at all, and there's no traffic lights. So, to me, it's very dangerous for different people for different reasons. So to me, that's why I just wanted to come here tonight. So, gentleman was nice enough to call me and say you guys were having this meeting tonight because I actually live in Erie, so I don't, I've only been in this town like twice just to check it out. But we've been right down there for the past since 2011. So but like I said, I just wanted to throw that out there that I'm going to purposely block off part of that entrance to stop that. So the challenges at that corner will probably increase. And I'm not doing it to be mean, I'm doing it from a safety perspective. And honestly, the parking lot was $8,000 to build, and it's cost me $4,000 to fix. So for a nonprofit, that's a lot of money to keep putting out to subsidize, traffic, so.
Oh, I agree. And I thank you Yeah, you need to take care of your
Other-
people that
yeah,
come
I
for
just, like I said,
safety
I just,
purposes. Absolutely.
you know, when you have the 4-H people telling you that people are tearing through there and there's kids in the parking lot, it's scary, so.
It is, it is.
All right, I appreciate your time, thank you.
Well, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming here this evening to speak to us as well.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Okay. The next item on the, oh.
Jim Halick, 2650 Meadow Lane, Mead, Colorado. I've been gone out of the country for the last 3 weeks. Right before I left, I brought up a proposal about TDS, his franchise agreement. And I know that Mary told me today that there's a meeting coming up, but is there, from the city standpoint, a questionnaire that they're going to present to TDS? Or is it going to be up to us, people that don't speak very well, to get up here and ask those questions to them on the 13th?
They will have a representative here on the 13th to answer questions specifically about the interruption in service that many of our citizens have been experiencing. We're going to ask them to give a presentation that addresses that, and then we will be asking along, you know, I assume our attorney as well as board members and any member of the audience will be able to ask them directly about it.
Okay. So my question then is there anything that's been given to TDS to come here with certain criteria for customer service expectations that will be presented to them that night so they can answer those questions on how they're going to proceed with customer service and hold up to a, you know, I don't know what the franchise agreement said, and I haven't got any feedback from you as to what that says on what they're expected to do.
Right, and if, maybe after the meeting, if you will make sure that I have your contact information, what I'm happy to do is share the correspondence that's been sent to them to date. Frankly, we took a lot of the examples of the specific channels that were down in the interruptions of service, and that was what was communicated to TDS initially.
Okay.
So if you make sure I have your contact information, I'm happy to follow up with a copy of that correspondence. Okay?
Thank you.
But you were gonna look into the, like, minimum customer service level that they have to meet, right? And are they going to address, hey, we're meeting that level, even though we've had all this interruption of service, we're meeting that level? Or are they going to be addressing, yeah, we have not been meeting that level, here's what we're gonna do to fix it? Because I thought that was one of the things that we had asked you to look into, was specifically the customer service level that is expected of them to provide per their franchise agreement, and are they meeting that?
Right, and I believe that we'll figure out what they say on the 13th, but it's my understanding that they acknowledge that they're not meeting some of those minimum requirements. Based upon the correspondence that we've had from the TDS representatives to date, they are, I think, planning on a substantial investment in bringing better service to the community, and I think that on the 13th we should hear about those plans in additional detail and some specifics in terms of timing. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Last question, I promise. Sherry Olson, 303 Adams Avenue in Mead. Thank you to our CDOT friends for answering that, and I know a lot of conversation and question was around 7 and 5. But that still, we have not had that serious dialogue, I believe, on how this is going to impact those of us that live on Adams Avenue between County Road 5 and 7. The amount of traffic that will be coming through. If I'm a parent and I could go out on 5 and I don't have a signal to get out there, I'm coming down 32 and I'm going up 7. So we're going to have this nightmare going on, potentially, when we have two developments going on at the same time. And I would like to know, what is the town of Mead's plan to help mitigate that? Because it's going to directly impact me, because I'm the first driveway at the four-way, or at the stop sign from 32 Adams Avenue onto 7. And I have very specific concerns about what is going on, what will go on. My traffic, I won't be able to get out of my driveway. So I want to know what the plan is from the town, because this is a town issue, not CDOT, because CDOT's taking on the sides, but who's going to take care of that traffic in the middle? So that's my question.
Is Sorrento paving the road all the way from, what are they paving as far as County Road 32 goes?
They are paving the road between County Road 7 and County Road 5.
The whole thing?
Yes, so that will mitigate it. To be honest with you, you know, they've looked at the traffic studies, and it doesn't call for widening the road, but it does call for paving the road and putting in a sidewalk. So both developments building in tandem. I mean, I'd be lying to say it won't be disruptive. Whenever there's construction, you're going to have construction vehicles out there. Typically, once they get going and they move all the dirt, they'll be on site, but there will be disruptions. But once both projects are built, the Adams Avenue will be paved in between and the bridge replaced as well.
That bridge will be widened and, it will be widened and replaced, correct, the bridge?
Yes,
Yeah,
the bridge will be
so
replaced as well.
It'll be
A full two-lane
actual
road
two-lane
that you don't have to
bridge.
stop with head-on collisions.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business, 24-hour flex renewal. Town treasurer, Mrs. Rademacher, will speak to this.
Denise Rademacher, Town Treasurer. So one of the employee benefits that the town offers to their employees is a flexible spending account. A flexible spending account allows employees to save money pre-tax for child-dependent care and for medical costs. The renewal here is to renew with 24-hour Flex, who's been our provider for the last couple of years. And we do have about 60% of the employees that currently do participate in the Flex plan. And I haven't heard any really negative input regarding their service that they receive from the Flex plan. We did have a representative come out last week and do a presentation to the employees about you know, the upcoming open enrollment and answer any questions that they had. So you have the AIS in front of you. If you have any questions regarding that, I can answer those at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rademacher. Is there a motion regarding the 24-hour flex renewal?
I'll make a motion to renew the 24-hour flex renewal.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is resolution number 89R, resolution of the Town of Mead, Colorado, authorizing execution of oil and gas division orders. And Mrs. Rasmussen will be discussing this.
Thank you. As you know, the town has mineral interests in various oil and gas wells under existing lease agreements. And as those wells go into production, the town needs to execute division orders to confirm the appropriate payments to the town for our share of the proceeds. The town's royalty payments will be dependent on the ultimate production of each well. So these particular documents, the division orders, are reviewed by legal staff, and there is a sample one in your packet. Rather than bring each of these to you individually for approval, staff is recommending that the board authorize the town manager to execute these documents by way of this resolution.
Are there any questions?
Not so much question, more concern. I think
Okay.
it still should be brought before the board to be discussed and be aware of what's going on with those.
Would our town attorney, would it be possible, even if Helen signed the agreements, would they still come in front of the board so we were aware of of what was actually going on with the oil and gas orders that come in through the town.
I think the intent of the resolution, and again, because these division orders do not amend or restate the underlying lease agreements in any way, they're simply, these are documents that confirm the percentage ownership interest of the town in each of these wells. So the intent was to delegate authority to the town manager to execute these following review by either my office or, depending on the type of oil and gas lease involved, I may find it beneficial to go out and retain special oil and gas counsel to actually review the division order. Following review of those by legal counsel, then this resolution would delegate authority to the town manager. Trustee Adams, I understand your concern. You're asking, should these come before the board in every instance? That's really up to the board to decide. We were attempting to streamline the process a little bit and allow the town manager to execute these. I suppose if you know, one other possibility would be to have the town manager in her report, call those out and make you aware of when certain division orders have been executed, so that you're aware of those and perhaps ask for a ratification. But we were trying to set up a process through which these division orders could be approved without bringing everyone into the board.
Do we get quite a few of them? Just out of curiosity, I mean, I don't know, do we get like 3 or 4 a month or anything, or is it sporadic, right? So you would include them in your minutes too, I mean, in your meetings? I wouldn't have a problem with that if it moves something along faster and it's being reviewed by the attorney in our engineering department.
How much do we have as far as say or understanding of what may or may be offered or given to the town based upon those rights? So my concern is there any negotiations that go on from that process?
So all of that would have been defined in the lease agreement, which would have come to the board for approval. So this is really just the authorizing the transaction for us to start collecting the royalties based on what's been defined in the lease agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so there's really no negotiation.
Okay.
In this document. It's really a document to confirm the percentage ownership interest that the town has in a specific.
So it is already stated it's a set, that we don't have any say in that. It's already stated and accounted for.
Correct. The royalty payments would be dependent upon what was agreed to in the original lease agreement. And that will not be changed. In order to amend the lease agreement, that would have to come back.
Okay, so I was just trying to understand if that was something that was done on each and every one as that came up, or was that already done a blanket for these? That was my question. So it is not on an individual basis that these are done that way.
The division orders are done on an individual well basis.
Okay.
But again, the ultimate royalty that's paid is going to be based upon the underlying lease agreement, which would have been executed at some point in the past.
By the board?
By the board.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Rasmussen. May I have a motion in regard to Resolution 89R 2018?
I'll move to adopt resolution number 89R 2018, a resolution of the Town of Mead, Colorado, authorizing execution of oil and gas division orders.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is Resolution number 90R 2018, and Mrs. Rasmussen will be discussing that with us as well.
As you know, we're going to construct the North Creek Sewer Project, and the town needs to acquire a temporary construction easement and a permanent easement from one private landowner who's adjacent to the project. Now that we have received the executed grant agreement from DOLA, we can move forward with this action of acquiring the easements. This item before you approves the easement agreements, which are in your packet, and it authorizes the mayor pro tem to execute the purchase of that, those easements.
Can you tell me where the easements are? I mean, this isn't like one of those little house subdivisions. You're not like taking land from them. You're talking one of the bigger surrounding
Right, this is a
landowners?
Yeah, this is one landowner. It's a farmer whose property is on County Road 7. And so basically, if you imagine a straight line from the North Creek subdivision east through a farmer's field to Road 7, and ultimately it'll go to Feather Ridge. So that's the general alignment of where this easement is.
And we're buying this from him then? So is this gonna be an expense?
Right, so we're buying a permanent easement because we will have a sewer line constructed there forever. So we need to be able to have access to it in the future. The temporary easement does have an expiration date of next December, so that just allows us some additional room to do the actual construction, but ultimately that does go away. So I believe the temporary easement is 30 feet and the permanent easement is an additional 20 feet. So the whole swath is 50. We'll retain 20 of it permanently.
So then the landowner's okay if
Yep, I have.
He's all good with our purchase?
I have negotiated that with him.
Are there any other questions? May I have a motion in regards to resolution number 90R 2018?
I make a motion to approve resolution number 90R 218, a resolution of Town of Mead, Colorado, approving the easement agreements associated with the North Creek Sewer Main Project.
I'll second.
Yes, and would you amend that to 2018? You said 218.
I'm sorry, 2018.
And same second?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is grants for community organizations.
Denise Radmaker, Town Treasurer. So you all approved a new policy called the Grants to Community Organizations, wherein organizations that wanted and requested funding from the town would need to go through a process to request such donations, filling out a donation request form, coming before you all to answer any questions. And we did execute that policy. We sent out letters to the three entities who had received money from the town in the past, the Chamber, the Mead Chamber, the Mead Motorheads, and the Mead High School Booster Club. We did receive the donation request forms from the Mead Chamber and from the Mead Motorheads by the deadline that we had given. We also posted this in, or publicized it in the newsletter so that other organizations would know about it, and it was also on our website. So we did receive 2 donation requests, which were included in your board packet. Since this is a new policy, what we're recommending at this point in time is that you review the applications that you received. The policy does say that you can request the grantees or the donation requestees to make a presentation to you all before you award any money to them. So we are recommending that you could have them both come to the meeting on the 13th to do a presentation to you all before you decide how much and whether you will be funding them in 2019. And then you can make that decision at the end of the last meeting in November if that's what you choose to do. So that's basically what staff is recommending at this point in time. And if you have any questions about the process or how we did it, I can answer those now.
Okay. Are there any questions? I have a couple. I'm looking at the meeting chamber, their scope for work in 2019, and I would like us or the staff to set aside a meeting where we can talk with them, because we are looking at hiring a PIO, and I look at a lot of the things that they're asking for. Some of those could be bought in-house possibly, and I'm concerned about a better way to utilize them in our town, and just to come up with maybe a better strategy for the chamber to be more successful. Right now, we give them almost $8,000, and I would just like them to come in and talk with us in some sort of work session to better understand where they're coming from on their events that they want to propose. They did give us their statement, their profit and loss, and one of their main objectives was to do our business flyer or business directory, and in their profit and loss statement, they don't have that as line items, so I'm kind of curious as to how it was created, and then maybe to work with them on other items like the summer fest that they want to do. I don't know, we have an events committee that has a big concert, and we do recognize the businesses there, and so maybe just getting with them and having a work session to come up with better ideas for it to work for everybody in the town of Mead, including the citizens as well as the businesses, to make it just a more productive situation. I know that Concerts in the Parks does recognize the businesses in town, and I just think maybe we can come up with some ideas to just make it a better situation for everyone involved. So I would suggest we hold off on making any decisions and have a work session with them, with some of their directors or vice president, treasurer, it doesn't matter, just people within their organization and with our board to get a better understanding of what they want to do in the future for us in 2019. That is my thoughts on it, because I think we can utilize them better, and if we work together in a work session to come up with ideas that would make it just better for the whole community. Those are my thoughts on it. Is there any other thoughts or comments from any other trustees?
But we have to, this has got to be set for the budget.
For the 2019 budget, right now I have included in the 2019 budget the exact same amount that was in the 2018 budget. So unless you decide to fund it even more, there should be funds available in the current proposed budget that we wouldn't need to do any changes there. Do you wish me to, or do you want staff to contact the Mead Motorheads and have them come on the 13th to do a presentation to you all, or how do you want me to move forward with that organization in particular?
I guess it wouldn't be bad for both of them to come in. We have been funding both of them for several years. I mean, and that's just my opinion, that maybe have them both come in and present their plans and how it's gone for them and what they want to pursue for the new year.
And I should probably know this, but like the Mead Motorheads, do we actually give them $600 in cash, or is it in like kind?
No, we do reimburse them 600. Okay. Yeah, we do send them 600.
Are there any other thoughts and comments?
I guess I don't have much of a problem with the Mead Motorheads one. I mean, it's only $600, but the chamber one is considerably more.
Yeah, and I'm just concerned because we are bringing a PIO in, that maybe it would be, you know, the business directory. There's just so much. I just think we need to have a meeting with the chamber for.
You don't want to have any duplication of efforts, I think is what you're trying to say. Okay.
Exactly, and when you look at their criteria, what they're doing, it just seems better that business directory, if we do go with PIO, and we are interviewing for one, when you look at everything we have to do to get that business directory together, we might as well just finish it, because we have to create the business names, we have to give them the pictures, we have to give them all the contact information. If we're doing that, we could probably put it together in a directory like a lot quicker.
And I was on the chamber board when that kind of switched, so there is a longer story to how that is all supposed to work, and I think it may have just been diluted from how it was to be to how it is today. And maybe we could just clarify that again, too.
If I may, I will reach out to Jessica at the chamber, and we can sit down, she and I, and kind of talk through some strategies. I kind of have some ideas too that I think the chamber could really help the town, and I think if we could iron this out and come up with, there are some items that have been put on this list that I think might be better achieved by the town. For example, the business directory, especially with having a PIO, that would be an item that might make more sense. But let me talk to her, and then we'll have her come in and present. But we can need an idea exchange. I'd like to ask Janet to be a part of that as well, because she is involved in so many events, town events. There's just got to be a better way to maximize what the chamber does and what the town does. And I think we have a real opportunity with this public information officer coming on board probably in late November. So I will get together with her, and we'll come up with something to present to the board.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I think, the least amount of money, optimizing the most amount of people is the greatest way to bring it across. So thank you, Mrs. Mickelbrink, and thank you, Mrs. Redden. Next item on the agenda is reports and comments, and the agenda was changed, and Police Chief Newbanks will address us first.
Brent Newbanks, Chief of Police, Town of Mead. Thank you, Board, for giving me just a moment to update you on the status of the police department. I know I've gotten several questions about how things are going and where we stand, so I'll try to give you a real brief synopsis of how that's going. Currently, we have the 3 full-time officers that were here when I got here, and one of those is assigned to the schools and SRO. The other 2 are on patrol in the street. So the hours that we're trying to cover daily is noon to 10 p.m. With those 2 officers. They are also training new officers. So we've had 3 officers start this month. They are in various stages of their field training. Field training program is a standardized 14-week program. So that can be shortened or lengthened depending on the needs of the individual, depends on their experience, so forth. So of those 3 officers that started this month, I expect one of them to come out of that training right around the first of the year. Could be just before or just after. The other 2 will be closer to February or March before they come out. So it gives you kind of an idea of when we can start seeing additional officers on the street and additional hours covered. We've been focusing on traffic safety. I think I heard that pretty clear tonight, that that's a concern in the community. So we've been making that a priority as well. There's been some initiatives to enforce speed limit on Welker, as well as have some presence out on 66. We try to be cognizant of doing that without making that problem any worse. But there were 27 summonses issued in the month of October, just so you kind of have an idea of where we're at this point. Do expect that number to continue to climb as more officers are out on the street. It's not just about issuing summonses. There's a lot of educational opportunities out there that we're taking advantage of, and part of that is just letting people know that we are there to enforce the laws, and letting them know what those laws are, which has obviously takes a little bit of education. I had the opportunity this week to tour the high school impressive facility with a large group of students. And we do a lot of work within the school. That officer could very well be the busiest officer in the department with the number of cases and also the educational opportunities that come with that position. I attended the football game on Friday night. It was very well attended by the community. We did have one arrest out of there, an 18-year-old male for consumption of alcohol, and had a warrant for his arrest as well as a small disturbance that was handled by the school staff, but I think they were appreciative of the police presence at the game, which hopefully assisted with a peaceful resolution in that case. So that's kind of what's been going on at the police department. I welcome any questions and appreciate the opportunity to give you a brief update.
I just also want to thank you for your outreach that you've done for the community for the last 6 to 8 weeks with the cookies with the cops and cocoa with the cops. I think that went over really well in the community. It was nice to go to it and see the policemen with the kids and not being afraid and being part of a sports, you know, playing basketball or whatever they were doing. It was very good. I think it was very well attended. I think it was a great idea to go out and do that. So I appreciate you guys taking the extra effort to get out and meet the community like that.
Thank you. I agree. It's been very, very productive and appreciate that.
Is there any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to say thank you again for everything you guys have been doing. You guys are definitely stepping it up, and the presence is being seen more and more, so.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next person on the agenda is the planning director, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem. You have a copy of my report. A couple of quick highlights. The design for Ames Park and Highland Lake Park is those designs are underway, and so we should have some draft design ideas in front of us for review over the next couple of weeks. And so the idea there is that we'll hold another community meeting the first week in December and then present that back to the board and the community. So that's very exciting. Looking forward to seeing that come together. Anytime Fitness is very close to getting their final permits to wrap up their construction and get open. So excited about that. Hopefully we'll be able to go jump on a treadmill after our Halloween candy and Thanksgiving dinner. So that's exciting as well. The Highlands annexation, the proposed community there between Coyote Run and Feather Ridge, the annexation component of that will be going to the Planning Commission this Thursday and then back to this board for our final review on the 13th, I believe, of November. So we have that to look forward to as well. And then a quick update on Mead Village. They are waiting, they've notified staff that they're waiting until the new year to start the construction of those initial 50 homes, and then they'll be back in to replat the balance of that site. So those are the highlights. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Kennedy? Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Next person on the agenda is Recreation Coordinator, Mrs. Torres.
Hello, you guys have your report from me. One thing that I did want to highlight, because there's not a lot of detail on there, is the business appreciation lunch that we're having tomorrow that you all received an invitation to last week. It's from 11:30 until 1, and we'll have a PowerPoint presentation. It's a great opportunity for us to showcase everything that you guys have been doing and working on and getting passed for the community. And it's an opportunity for us to thank the businesses for being in the town of Mead. So if you are available tomorrow during that time, if you can just let Helen or Mary know that you're coming, just so we have enough place settings set out for everyone. We should have plenty of food. But currently we have about 46 people that are coming, and we invited 105, so that's a pretty good turnout.
So this was probably in an email that we didn't get.
Okay. No, I got the email. Oh, your email's still down. Yeah.
We apologize for the email problems. I mean, we, just something keeps creeping up. I think we're about there. Check your emails again, and I do apologize. It's almost, what happened when the emails crashed, it deleted all your cell phone numbers in my phone. All my contacts got deleted. So I couldn't text you. I couldn't email you. I mean, because I have no idea why when the email server crashed. Some of our phones, it deleted all our contacts, and others it didn't. But we're moving forward. Things are better. But we have to tell you in person, there's a business appreciation luncheon tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 11:30.
And we're having fried chicken and all kinds of good food.
Yeah, and I appreciate the efforts with that. Is there anything else you wanted to go over? Is there any questions for Mrs. Torres? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Torres. Next person on the agenda is Town Engineer, Public Works Director, Erica Rasmussen.
Thank you. You have my report. A couple highlights relative to the sanitary sewer projects, the North Creek lift station and the Dillingham sewer alley replacement. Those both were released for bid, and we have those bids from last week. And so we're currently reviewing those. I would expect that we'll actually make an award on those later this week and get the construction scheduled for that. It's just that time of year. We're kind of wrapping up everything else, our transportation plan, our stormwater master plan. We're trying to wrap those up for the year. So hopefully I'll have a final document of each of those to present to you soon as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Yeah. Okay, no, there isn't, Mrs. Rasmussen. Thank you. Next person on the agenda is Mrs. Stratt.
Thank you. You have my report. I'd like to just mention a couple of things. One, the email that just came up. So our email server did crash when Microsoft did an update. It did affect other businesses. The reason it affects us worse, or we think worse, is because we don't have a backup. We're so small that we don't have a backup. This actually affected my husband's business at the same time. My husband works for a company with 2,500 people. They were back up in an hour and a half because they were able to switch their mail to a different server. We don't have that option here. So we only have one server, not a backup server. So it took us a while to get it back up. Our option that we went to was having hosted email. So our email shouldn't go down again because we did have it go down twice in 6 months. I'm still working through the kinks that took. One is I just noticed my email on my tablet didn't work today either. So if your email on your tablet isn't working, maybe if you could leave it with me again and I'll get the guys back here again tomorrow. They told me they fixed it and I'm sorry I didn't check. So I apologize for that. Another thing on technology is I went to the Municipal Clerks Association conference last week in Colorado Springs, and it was a fantastic conference. I went to a couple of really great seminars. One was on social media, another on cybersecurity. But something that I learned that I'd like to kind of mention is just kind of our audio-visual equipment here. And I just kind of like to mention that. And I kind of give the example, my husband goes out and buys tools all the time. And he wants to buy a $500 state-of-the-art tool. That's what he wants, that's what he needs. But he comes home with a cheaper version. And I'm like, why'd you get the cheaper version? He's like, because it was less expensive. I'm like, yeah, but you're gonna have to eventually go get that expensive one. So maybe you shouldn't have wasted the money on the lower stuff. So when we first talked about this, this camera here, we kind of talked about that a little bit. Were we buying a cheaper version that eventually we'd have to upgrade to? This camera equipment cost us $5,000. I think the camera equipment is working well. The state-of-the-art equipment was going to cost us probably $15,000. I think the camera equipment's working well. Our microphones, on the other hand, are just a constant source of irritant to me. And it has to do with the feedback that we continue to get. And we continue to get the feedback because they're wireless and because of the band that they work on. I discussed this with the cybersecurity people and with some vendors at Clerks Association, unfortunately, to upgrade, it's very expensive. We're talking minimum $10,000, probably 15 for a wired system, and 25 for a wireless system. So I just wanted to kind of throw those numbers out there at the back of your heads as if this becomes too much of an irritation to you all, it might be something we consider getting in the budget at some point. But just wanted to lay that out there. But there's a really good system that, like, these work on batteries. The state-of-the-art one doesn't work on batteries. It's a power pack that you can plug in. You have on and off. You actually have a speaker in your microphone so that you can hear each other speak. So it goes to the speakers in the ceiling, but it also goes to the speakers so other people can hear it too. In addition, the chairperson has light up things where if Trustee Adams wants to speak, he pushes his button saying he wants to speak, and it would light up on the chairperson's thing. So there's kind of some cool stuff with it, but it's very expensive. So for now, we've got some feedback. I try to manage it as best as we can, but it is the bandwidth of this system, and I'm not able to find any other improvements for it, so I apologize.
And you've been doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Keeping it all in check as best you can, so thank you.
Yeah, I think it's fine. People can still hear. It's not perfect, but it's what we can afford to do.
Right.
So thank you, Mrs. Strutt. Next item on the agenda is Town Manager, Mrs. Mickelbrink.
Thank you. You have my report. I would like to punctuate two things on my report. First of all, we will be having the interviews with public information officer candidates. We have some really good candidates. I'm really excited about that. Thank you, Trustee Adams, actually, for suggesting that we change the title to Public Information Officer. We had it as Director of Communications. We actually changed the title, and we got a much better crop of candidates that are more close to what we're looking for. So I'm really confident we're going to come out the other side with a really good candidate to be our PIO. As you know, the talent agency, who has been doing our PIO work for the last almost 2 years, has indicated that they would like to move on at the end of the year. So this will give us a perfect transition. Actually, Amy's going to sit on our panel to help us select the next PIO. So I think that's really terrific. It'll be a great transition. The other thing is, and I don't know if all of you know, but we got notification from the principal of the grade school that they've changed their mind about renovating the school, and it kind of caught me a little off guard because we had met with their facilities people last year, Janet and I had, and we didn't know they were going to do that. So it may impact us, particularly with the fields, and when we find out how they're going to build this new school. So we're going to be meeting, Janet set up a meeting that we'll be meeting with their facilities people, and also we'll be going to the meeting on November 5th as well. And I will keep you all apprised of it, but it could have a big impact on our recreation programs. So, and with that, you have my report, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mrs.? Okay. Next item on the agenda is Mayor Pro Tem Palazewski. I don't have anything except to say I hope everyone has a safe and happy Halloween. And that they stay warm. It's kind of a bummer that weather's not cooperating for that. And then town trustees, are there any comments, suggestions? None, okay. Then can we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion for adjournment.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.